What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Cultural Shift. This is Faisal Villani from Villani Consulting, and we have another amazing guest with us today. I've got Dominic Rufran. How's it going, Dominic?
Hey, it's going fantastic. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm glad to have you. You know what? Before we get started, I know you just celebrated a birthday about 2 weeks ago. Is that right?
That's true. August 11th.
Nice. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Tell me a little bit about how it was having a quarantine birthday. I'm always curious to know what people do.
Well, it's very fascinating that you say that because I actually did not do a quarantine birthday. So
Okay.
I worked all day probably till about like 4 or 5 o'clock, and then we actually went to dinner with my wife, my mom, and my brother. So we went to the Roadhouse, and then after that, we went to an escape room, which is like one of my favorite things to do. So we did that, and then after that, played an indoor soccer game. So it was all good things. Got to be competitive, got to compete, and go out and out. So I wasn't really quarantined at all, if you ask me.
Dude, that sounds amazing. So mine is on May 14th, and that's when a lot of this was just going down. We had, I think, 25 or 30 people on a Zoom call. It was clunky as hell. We're trying to play these different games, and everybody's got their shots in their hand, but they're all taking it at different times. Like it was cool to set it up, but in that scenario, it was like less is more type of thing.
For sure. That seems like it would be a little overwhelming.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, you know what? I want to ask you before we jump into anything, tell me, what is the game of the wealthy? Why do you call your company that? What's the deal with that?
Yeah, great question. So my entire background is based around athletics, and I've been a dreamer of playing in the NFL since I was 2 years old. Right. And it was always a game for me. And I did everything in my power to achieve that. And I played in the NFL for a very short amount of time.
That's all right.
Yeah. And so through that process, I was like, man, the game, there's always about the game. And then I made a transition from athletics to life after. And I started going through this process of learning about money, risk, and, how to improve other people's lives. And I started realizing like the wealthy start to do things a little bit different than the poor middle class do. And realized that they play a different game. And I was like, you know what? I read the book, by Russell Brunson, Expert Secrets, and he talks he talks about red ocean versus blue ocean. Yeah, I had to think like, what is a blue ocean that I could do? What is nobody doing? But something that still I'm passionate about, that I love. Right. And the thing that came up to me is, well, if I can combine two different brands and bring them into two different industries, which was sports and an industry of finance, and bring them together and talk about those concepts as one. And be able to build a brand around that. I don't know anybody else is doing that. So I was like, well, there's the game, there's the wealthy. I love sports. Let's bring money and football and sports together and call it the game of the wealthy. So I take a lot of concepts around the sports industry and kind of talk about money at the same time. And that's kind of a lot of my messaging. And so that's how I came up with the name.
That's amazing, because I think it's been 3 weeks now, 3 or 4 weeks. I had Jedediah Collins on the podcast as well.
I love him.
Ex-NFL fullback, and he talked about the exact same scenario where he's like, I was an athlete, but money was something that was always just such a big mystery to athletes, and he wanted to bring that visibility. And it sounds like you guys are doing it, but in two very distinct manners. So tell me a little bit about what it is that you do to help people out.
Yeah, and first of all, Jedediah is an incredible dude. Him and I, we got a chance to talk a little bit, and he's doing some amazing things. Oh yeah, and he's just teaching people financial education on a whole nother level. And so, I love what he's doing. And so, specifically, I look at myself as a wealth coach. And so, my background growing up is I was extremely poor. Grew up in a trailer park, food stamps, welfare, single one income growing up with my dad. And it was just tough to see my parents struggle financially, like over and over and over, and never have any money. And the worst part about it was not having any money, but seeing them stressed out and seeing them always have a low quality of life because of money. And they fought because of it. They got divorced because of it. My family around me was always struggling, and it just seemed like wealth was unobtainable. And through the process of learning and self-development, I realized that there is way more to this life than what I was, grew up around. And I said, if I can teach people how to get their money right, how to get their finances right, their quality of life will improve drastically. And so like my purpose and my passion is really helping people find clarity around what they want out of life, and then teaching them that this tool, money, is a tool to help them achieve whatever that is that they want. So if they want to travel, live a life of freedom, they want to build a business, whatever that looks like, how can we use this tool, money, to achieve the goal that you want in life?
You know, I'm going to relate to that because my family came here as immigrants, and my dad literally came here with like $20 in his pocket, or at least that's the story that he tells us. I was about 8 years old when we moved here, so my memory is a little vague. And same thing, we grew up on food stamps and coupons. I remember when coupons used to come in newspapers, you had to cut them out, and when Randall would have like double deal coupons, so you knew you can get better stuff. I was telling the story to a close friend of mine who's never heard it. My first Nintendo, the way we bought it is my dad gave my brother and I 50 cents a day, and we saved that up for 100 days, and he paid for the tax because it was $99 plus tax. He paid the tax, and that's how we got our first Nintendo with one controller. Wow. Right? So he'd play his turn, I play my turn, unless if it was duck hunt, then we could kind of switch back and forth. But at a certain point, it's so funny because they got successful. Like he worked really hard. 5-7 years went by. He became successful. Money started coming in, but like you said, people don't know what to do with their money. So this is what I saw all the time. Money came in, money went out. Money came in, money went out. And the only way money came in is if he worked 50, 60, 70 hours a week. But as soon as he stopped right there, his money stopped working for him because he didn't invest. He didn't do anything with it, didn't put it in properties, and it went out again. And I saw that cycle up until I got into college. And then somebody in college said this line to me that kind of changed my life, because I was always brought up with the fact that money is the root of all evil, which is absolute bullshit, to be honest with you. What he told me is, he's like, look, you and the richest person in the world probably have the same problems, but when he solves his problems, he sits on a very comfortable couch. You don't. So he's like, you have to start acquiring money, and that kind of changed my perspective on money.
Yeah. It's all a mindset, right? Everything you're saying is coming back to mindset on how you view the world and how you see things, right? Even when it comes to like the whole coupon thing and thinking you're saving money, people are like, my wife does this all the time, and I'm trying to get her to think differently. She's like, wow, I just bought this thing over here. I gotta save 50% off. Like, you didn't really save 50%. You still actually spent $400. Like, people think that because it's on sale, they're actually saving money, but in reality, they're spending more money, right? Yeah. And it's just a cycle of like their mindset of how they view things. They can either be a victim or they can always be in growth. And coming back to the problems that you were saying before, of like, problems don't just stay problems, they get bigger problems. So either you're somebody who's going to be with no money and a lot of problems, or a ton of money and a lot of problems. Like, which one would you rather be? And so, it comes back to what you're saying about people say money is the root of all evil. It's not money is the root of all evil. It's the love of money is the root of all evil. If you make money your idol and you chase money, right? And if you think about it, it's not necessarily money that we're chasing. It's what money can do for us, right? Money can buy churches. Money can buy hospitals. It can impact the world. It can improve our quality of life by going on vacation and spending time with our family and buying us time. So it's not money that we're chasing, but when we focus on money and don't focus on value creation, then that's when we get into trouble. And that's when a lot of people get depressed and they start to go hit rock bottom, and they, want to start, committing suicide, all types of crazy things that can happen when you're focused on the wrong thing. So,
So, okay, talk to me a little bit about that, because my program is essentially what you said. I tend to get people to stop focusing on money and start realizing that money is a byproduct of their why. If they follow their passion, they follow their purpose, money will come. And every successful person in the world, if you listen to their autobiography or they listen to their interviews, they all tell you, I just followed my passion, right? It's very simple, straightforward advice. And all the ones who failed, if you listen to them, they all will tell you, I followed success. I followed money and it didn't happen. So what is it that you do specifically to change people's mindset? Because that's the hardest part that I've seen.
Yeah. And you can't help somebody, first of all, that doesn't want to get helped, right? Yeah. And that's the biggest thing, is if somebody is not willing to change and they don't want to change, then there's somebody else out there that does want that help that and that's the same thing in sales, right? We try to sell so many people too often that don't want to buy. and we spend so much of our time and energy on them, but there's literally thousands and thousands of other people out there that want your product that are waiting to buy. So first of all, try not to spend time with too many people that don't want to change. And then if people do want to change, right, we have to figure out, well, what is that why? And I think if somebody can get down to that deep root of why, if people haven't read the book, Simon Sinek, Start With Why, right? It's an amazing book to start with. And in having that belief system of a huge, and it's not just like, I want to travel, that's my why, or I want freedom, that's why. It's like way deeper than like the root cause. Like people have a severe root cause of change. And when they have something that hurts them so bad, then that's when they start to change. And so, diving deep into have you, Dean Grazioso, you know who that is, right?
Yes.
So he has a mastermind program that he came out with. And, I've actually heard this exercise before, but in that program, he has an exercise that's called 7 Deep Why. And what you do is I ask somebody like, hey, like, why do you do what you do? They're like, oh, well, I do this because I love it. Okay. Well, why do you love it? Well, because I get to interact with people. You ask why 7 times. And typically by the 5, 6 time that people are really struggling with answering why. But I've done this exercise with a lot of people. And by the time you get to 6 or 7, people are crying. They're literally crying because of how deep their why is. And a lot of time it has to do with their family or impact or something they love, right? And so I think when you can come up with a strong, deep why and create habits around that why to then come up with a strategy to solve it, you start to get momentum. And when you start to see success brings success, and that's how you create change.
I mean, Jedediah and I spoke about this a lot. We kept saying success leaves clues, right? If you just follow the clues, you'll get there. I think the problem is, like you said, right? People have a hard time defining their why. So this is what I do. I sit down and I define their why. And it's funny that you said that. I have the same methodology. Mine doesn't go 7. Mine goes like 5 or 6 typically. Because you're right. By the time you get to the 5th question, they are either emotionally being torn apart because they just don't want to flat out admit what their why is, because their programming, their birth, their upbringing has kind of taught them, you can't do this. This is not what you're meant to do. And the hardest part for me is to break that mold and say, you can do whatever you want to do. You've just been programmed to think that you can't do it. But right at 4 or 5 is when it gets really, really heart-wrenching for them. But when they finally admit it, when they finally write it down, I think it's probably the most liberating thing I've ever seen with every individual. It's like this weight drops off their shoulder. They kind of stand up. They feel a lot more stronger. They speak a lot more clearly. Their life automatically changes.
I couldn't agree with you more. I'm curious. What is your why?
I'll read it out to you. I'll tell you the reason behind it too. So my why specifically is I want to become legendary by making the world a better place. And I'll tell you a quick story about myself. So my brother is not even a year older than me. He's like 354 days, and I'm right behind him. He's May 26th. I'm May 14th. And my brother is literally the superstar of the family. He is like he's studious. He's got a great job. He's always been very athletic, and he's always been very studious. I, on the other side, have been very, very creative. I've always loved doing stage shows and acting. I wanted to be an actor growing up. But I said this to Jedediah as well. I'm like, if you know anything about immigrant families, you better be a lawyer, doctor, engineer. I mean, you got to fall into those 3 buckets, and that's what they program you with. So I held that part of me back for a very, very long time. But when I sat down and wrote out my why, what I realized is when I was on stage, when I was in front of an audience, when I was talking, that is what brought me the biggest amount of joy. It really, truly did. And then also growing up, I used to have these dreams of grandeur where my family name Villani would be one of the most recognizable names in the world. Like it would be legendary. And when I thought about that, it brought me the biggest joy. And that's the reason why I didn't name my company The Growth Hacker or I Can Grow Your Business, whatever it is. I chose Villani Consulting because I want that name to be recognized. And as far as making the world a better place, I've always been a Dear Abby. Like my friends have always come to me with problems. And I realized that if I can help one person just find their why and move towards that path and find happiness, that is what's making the world a better place. If somebody wakes up happy, I've changed it just a little bit. And I've taken some sort of violence, some sort of crime, or some sort of unhappiness away from the world. And that is where my why comes from.
That's so powerful. And you and I both know that because we live it, I can tell based off of the way you speak and how you hold yourself that living a happy life, there's nothing better than that. When you wake up every day and you truly are a happy human being and you love what you do, there's no better feeling. You've won at life. Like, it's just point blank, you've won. And so if you can help somebody else, I have this saying that if you're not making somebody else's life better, you're wasting your time, right?
Yes.
And so if you spend all of your time making other people's life better, which will then make them happier, that's how you create true change and impact, which also brings true fulfillment to you. So it's a win-win on all areas.
The thing that has given me the most, the thing that I struggled with for a very long time, again, because of having this older brother, is I always had an imposter syndrome. I was always competing with other people. I was always comparing myself to other people. When this happened, it wasn't like it happened right away, but eventually I then just started competing with myself. I would wake up and say, what do I need to do today to be better than yesterday? And the world doesn't matter. That was probably the biggest relief in my life. That is what got my shoulders up to say, okay, I don't need to compete with anybody anymore. And that's what your why does for you.
Yeah, that's powerful. I mean, because there's so many times where people are like super depressed or super down or have anxiety because they have this comparison syndrome. And especially with social media, it makes it very hard, right? You look at Instagram and LinkedIn and all these social platforms and you start comparing. They got this many followers. They got this many likes. They look this good. And
really, they're all living the $1 million life.
Yeah, exactly. And you're seeing everybody's best version of themselves when realistically, if you take a deep step back, like take a step back and peel back the onion, a lot of people are actually hurting inside, and you actually don't want their life, because if you did, you'd be in a lot more pain than you think. And so we all have our own problems, and that's why I'm a very empathetic human being. And I try to relate to everybody and knowing that we all go through something. And through that process, it helps you be a better human, which will also make you be a happier human, because you're not comparing yourself to anybody in their situation, because you know that they probably are going through something just like you are.
I want to piggyback off that. So you talk about empathy a lot. I've heard a couple of your posts. Why do you stress so much on empathy? Why do you think that is a quality that everybody should have?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is sometimes we forget that we're all human, right? Sometimes we put people on pedestals, or we think that we're the only ones going through certain issues. And a lot of the times, a lot of our pain, our suffering, our envy, our jealousy comes from not being able to relate to people and not being able to put our own shoes in their shoes, right? If I am talking to somebody and they say something that just rubs me the wrong way, and I'm just like, wow, like that was so rude and so disrespectful, and then I go off on them and I get pissed off and I get so angry at them, that did not do anything but make their life even worse. And how did I know that day their dog died, their mom died, their best friend is going through cancer? I just have no idea. And the thing is in this world, we're dealing with pain constantly. There's so much pain, and we all deal with it at some point. So the odds of me talking to somebody that is dealing with pain and they're not telling me is pretty high. Odds are pretty high. So if you can have empathy on all levels and being able to relate and be in that person's shoes, one, you will just be more fulfilled yourself by saying, okay, I know that they're probably dealing with something, so I'm going to be empathetic and a kind human. And when you're able to do that and rub off, people will see that and they'll be like, well, like, why is this person so different? And then they'll want to change, and then they'll go impact and be empathetic to the next person, so on and so forth.
Pay it forward. Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, no, I think even in leadership, right? Like empathy is a quality across the board. With companies that I deal with, when they ask what is the one thing that we could do to change our culture, I think empathy is a key word. And leaders don't think of that. Leaders don't think of empathy. They think of better pay, or they think of better opportunities, but everybody just wants to be understood. They just want to be heard. They want to be understood. They want to be valued. I don't know where I read this quote, but somebody said that if you give a person all the money in the world, you can't buy their life. But if you give them a medal, they'll lay down their life, or they lay down their life for you, for their country, right? Because they believe in that. They empathize with that. They understand that value. So if you can empathize with your employees and you can get them to buy into your company culture and know that you really care about them, a la Southwest Airlines, right? You can have this massive organization that's going to overtake anybody and everybody. And there's no secret there. It's simple. Everybody knows it, but it's just so hard to implement.
Yeah. No, I always just tell people, like, just be a good human, just be a better human. Like that's it at the end of the day. And, coming back to that leadership quality that you said that I think is very undervalued, that people aren't paying attention to, is humility, and having that word really sink in. because you said people just want to be heard. And that is really what humility comes down to, is being able to take a step back as a leader, listen to what your people are saying. And then when they speak, be able to accept what they say, even if it may not be the best decision, but to say, okay, we'll go with that route. We'll go with that route. As long as it's not a decision that's going to ruin the company,
Right.
that's fine. Go ahead and go with it. You empowered that person. You were humble enough to listen to them, to hear their voice. And now they feel part of the mission. Now they want to run through a brick wall for you because they understand that now they're the ones that are in the head front of it, and they want to be successful for you because they appreciate you making them feel valued.
Yeah, I mean, the most successful companies in the world, they have a culture of failure. They're willing to try things and say, okay, it didn't work, let's go back. And that failure is not held punishable, right? It's not held against that employee, unless obviously if that employee just continues to fail. But they've been giving that autonomy to say, hey, go try things, because that's how we're going to grow. That's how we're going to expand. That's how we're going to get better. So Dominic, tell me about your why. What is it that you want to do?
Yeah, so there's a deep-rooted why that a lot of it comes from my faith. So when I was 18, I ended up giving my life to Christ. And through that process, I realized that this world, there's so much to it than just myself. I'm just a little small piece of the bigger puzzle, right?
Yeah.
And I realized that everything that I do in my life, I want to be able to give back the glory to the God who created me. And I want to be a good example to leave for generations going forward. So when I leave, other people know that I was here, but because I was a good human, because I was able to impact other people, God was the one who got the glory through it. And I have a huge need for wanting to help athletes and people that are in the underperforming economic situations. And since I was an athlete and I was also in an underperforming economic situation growing up, those are very close to my heart. And so my big vision for when I use the word age of like 50, and the reason I use 50 is because it's just arbitrary. And I want to build sports fields for kids in third world countries. And I know at that point, it's going to take a lot of resources, time, energy. So everything I do is building up to that point so I can go out there and fulfill that prophecy.
Dude, okay, so I'm going to read you something really, really quickly. Let me see if I can find it. So this is part of my 10-year vision. I kind of write the whole thing down, career, finance, and all that. Part of my finance is I've started a foundation that helps underprivileged kids go to school and equip them with technology for better advancement opportunities. Because I truly believe that technology is what's going to change the world. It's going to bring the David and the Goliath down on the same level, right? Where people who don't have opportunities but have technology and they have the willpower and they have the skills can now make things that we couldn't have imagined before. Yeah. So our visions line up a lot as far as what it is that both of us want to do.
Yeah, I think it's you have an incredible heart to serve, man. And that's just what I appreciate about everything you've set up to this point. You really want to impact, you really want to serve, and you really want to create a lot of value to people and make their life better. So I really appreciate that and commend you for that.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. I will tell you what really truly changed my life is up until I was in my mid-30s, I wasn't this way. But the day when my daughter was born, it's like this light switch kind of went off, and I didn't realize how you can love somebody so much, right? That wasn't a part, that wasn't you, right? My wife and I have known each other for a long time. We've been high school sweethearts. I've known her since she was 14. We've been married for like 10 plus years. But when my daughter came, it's like the entire world changed, and all I wanted to do was make the world a better place for her. I think about the future. I was like, what is she going to grow up in? But now my philosophy, my vision of the world's completely changed. I'm like, even though we're sold pain a lot, like you said, all we see is pain. We live in a great world. We just don't realize it.
I think I couldn't agree with you more. How old's your daughter?
She's 7 now.
7.
Yeah.
You just gave away your age a little bit.
Oh, I'm pretty. How old do you think I am actually?
Well, I know now you're got to be 41. You said mid-30s, and then you said 7 years. So,
So I think I'm 39. I'm about to hit 40. Getting there.
I mean, honestly, I'm not joking you. According to your LinkedIn profile picture, I thought you were maybe like 25. And then when I saw you now, I thought you were probably like 31. So.
Oh man, I'll take that any day. I must be doing something right.
You sound like it too, right? You hold yourself. I think it's because when you hold yourself like you're older, but the way your face is, you just shaved too, the baby face.
Yeah.
It does well for you.
Well, I think it's the fact that, like you said, right, when you wake up happy, that's the best thing. It shows, it resonates. People love it. They're attracted to it. They know that you're living a happy life. They want to be a part of it, and you can't fake it. Like I see you, and I know you're doing exactly what you want to do because you're comfortable. You're not fidgety. You're not moving around. You're very comfortable in your own skin, and that's how it should be.
Yeah. You can see a glow in certain people, right? Some people are like down and in the dumps, and they're not, their energy. It's a lot of the energy people give off, and you can definitely see a light shine, or you can see people struggling at some point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So tell me, where do you see your company 10 years from now, right? Now that you've started and now that you're on this path, you're on this mission, where do you see yourself if you had to guess 10 years from now?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, because today I'm 27. So 10 years from now still wouldn't get me to that 50 mark, right? Being able to travel around the world and build sports fields for kids. And so in the meantime, I really want to become the person that deserves to be able to do that, though, right? And so I have visions of really being an Inc. 500 company, Fortune 500 company, and doing a really amazing things in the world of finance by being an influencer and being able to speak my mind about the truths, and people really, really listening in all areas of life. And the reason I say that is because the way the industry is done right now is really screwed up in so many ways. The financial space has been taught for, back in the early 1900s, and the way that it's been done doesn't work today anymore. And it's showing in a lot of people's older age. People are becoming 65 years old and they're getting ready to retire, and they feel like they don't have enough money left to live. And the biggest fear for baby boomers right now is outliving their money. And that R word, use it as a kind of a disgusting word, retirement, right? I don't believe that anybody should ever really retire, quote unquote. And the reason I say that is because there's statistics that show that when people retire, they end up just dying, right? Like legit dying, or they just get so bored that they end up finding to do something else anyway. So they end up working even longer. And so I'm also a firm believer that mortality rates are going up. There's a Forbes article that showed back in 2008, there was a baby that was born, and it said this baby will live to 140. And so it's showing that people are living a lot longer too. So if you're 65, and people are living to 140, you're not even halfway done with your life. So it means that you have to find a way to outlive your income even longer than that. So we really need to come back to what we were saying before: find your why, find your purpose, and do what you really love, because you really might want to consider doing what you love for the rest of your life, so you have solid producing income forever. And so there's so many things that I want to do by debunking so many myths and being an influencer and speaking in the space, and at a very, very high level, and not just within a community, but like nationally and worldwide, where people are hearing some of the things that I'm saying.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'll give you an example for my dad, right? My dad is now 74 or 75. My mom is I'm giving this away, I think she's about 15 to 20 years younger than him. But my mom retired a long time ago. She wants to stay home. My dad till this day does a part-time job. He just doesn't want to stay at home. And if you put them side by side, my dad looks a lot younger than my mom. And I think it's just that, right? Like your body wants to do something. You need to be social. You need to be active. You need to get out. And people who are retired, like you say, they kind of shrivel up. They get into this zone where they don't want to get out. And we're again being taught that the world is such a bad place. Media just keeps throwing it out there. So it's hard to block out negativity when you don't have anything to do.
So
right?
good.
Yeah. I truly believe the key to happiness in life is progress. It's not money. It's not success. It's not living with the person you love. You need progress. We need to continue to work towards a goal. You don't have to get there. You just need to progress towards it, enjoy that journey. And that is the true key to life.
Yep. Yeah. I'm a firm believer in what you said too. Growth is happiness, right? Yeah. You have to keep your mind stimulated. You have to be able to keep moving forward. And if you don't, you will become sad and depressed at the end of the day because you're not doing anything of true value. Couldn't
Yeah,
agree.
absolutely. So, before we start wrapping up, I do want to ask you, I ask everybody this. We're living in territory times right now, right? Unchartable times. Nobody's seen this. Nobody could have predicted this. From your field, especially from the field of finance, what kind of advice can you give to people right now on how they should get through this time?
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing is that in today's society, before COVID happened, we had a huge savings problem, right?
Yeah.
Nobody was saving any money. Statistics are staggering that majority of people don't have $1,000 in their bank account saved up. If an emergency comes and hits, they're really having to put it on credit because they're just screwed or borrow money from somebody. And so the biggest thing that I know you hear all the time, like people like Robert Kiyosaki say savers are losers and things like that. So people get into the thing like, I shouldn't be saving my money. And then you also have the people that are in the terrible habit of trying to keep up with the Joneses. So they spend the money that they don't have. And they grew up with really bad habits by seeing their parents spend all the money that they had. So ultimately, they have a really big savings problem in our world today. And, Robert Kiyosaki is a genius on so many levels. Rich Dad Poor Dad is a book that changed my life.
Yeah.
And his concept and the Richest Man in Babylon's concept of paying yourself first is honestly the most important principle to true financial wealth. Yeah. And so you can find a way to every time you get a paycheck coming in or a dollar that comes in from whatever it comes from, whatever, if it's a stipend, a stimulus check, money, gift, income, take a percentage off the top and pay yourself and put in an account that you won't touch. And that is the true beginning to building true wealth. And that's the thing people want to start doing is they want to start putting their money and investing into large accounts or into the stock market or in crypto or in gold or all these things. Yeah. But they haven't created a foundation for themselves yet. They don't have 6 months of savings at the minimum saved up in an account. They don't have, their high interest debt paid down. They're buying things that they shouldn't buy. They don't have life insurance. They don't have the estate plan in place. They don't have disability. Like there's all these things that people don't have in place, but they're trying to go out there and put all their money in a risky account where they can lose everything. And if they do lose everything, then they have to start over. And then they, are trying to figure it out. So the biggest thing I'd say is get the foundation in place, get the mindset in right, and save more money. And you'll definitely be better off than 90% of people.
So there's one thing that you said, and I had a hard time with this concept until I realized it later. Robert Kiyosaki does say savers are losers, right? But he specifically says you should save and then take that money and then go invest it. I think people hear that first part and they're like, oh, I shouldn't save. I should just go ahead and invest it or spend it somewhere else. Again, how do you get your clients to get that mind shift, right? Because people listen to what they want to listen to and they zone out everything else.
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing is habits. And I think big time people just don't want to feel locked down or feel told what to do or feel like they can't spend the money they have. And so if you can just start with something basic and something simple of pay yourself first, right? Mm-hmm. Just come up with that concept. If they heard that Robert Kiyosaki said savers are losers, well, you also heard that he said pay yourself first, right? Mm-hmm. So if you can come up with the habit of paying yourself first, and then everything else that's left over, do whatever you want with. And if that's what you have to do to get you through to paying yourself first and saving more money, then that's what you have to do, right? And so that's a great place to start of just getting that one thing, focusing on one thing, and that's it. Don't try to do 100 things at once. Don't try to do everything all at the same time. Just do one thing, which is pay yourself first. Eventually, that account will start adding up, and you'll start to see it grow. And you'll want to start doing more money. Instead of doing 10%, you'll do 20%. Then all of a sudden, you take some of that money and now you start investing in yourself. You start producing more cash flow. Now you start saving 40%. You take some of that money, invest in yourself. Now you start saving 50%. Now you've had a foundation in place. Now I can take some of this money, store it in a great place that's getting you a high interest yield. And then when an opportunity presents itself and you are educated in that opportunity, you then take that money and invest into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Hey, Dominic, this was great. Tell the audience where they can find you and why they should connect with you.
Yeah. So the two places that I'm on is one is if you want to listen to my podcast, it's called The Game Goes On. And what it is I interview former athletes and I talk about their story from how they went from an athlete into life after sports, talk about their emotions, their struggles, their transition, and then also what they learned from sports and how they're applying it in the life after sports today. That's called The Game Goes On. You can look at it on Apple, iTunes. And then the second place is on LinkedIn. That's just my first name, Dominic, last name Rufran, and it's Rufran. And that is honestly a great place to connect with me with. I love connecting with people there. I spend some time on that platform. I'm not one of those individuals that just because I may have a decent following or connections, or I'm all over the place, where I feel like I'm too good or my ego's too high. I genuinely care about people, and if you really want to build a solid relationship, I am that person. I love people. I love hearing people's stories. People try to start selling me on day one, then it's a different story. But if you're really trying to build relationships, then I'm all about it. So that's why I'm a great person to connect with.
Absolutely. All right, guys. So you heard it. No bots, right? If you really want to talk to Dominic, send him a personal message. He will respond back. And I can attest to that, right? That's how you and I connected. I think we just kind of started sending messages back and forth to each other. Yeah. Built a pretty decent relationship where we're on the podcast together. So absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I had a great time being here. This was a lot of fun. So thanks for having me as well.
Absolutely. And guys, I will put a link to all of Dominic's connections here. You guys can find it on the podcast link. You can find it in the comments as well. Reach out to him, touch base. If you need any help with money or anywhere to learn how to start investing, reach out to Dominic. He is your source. And again, thank you for joining on The Cultural Shift. I will see you guys next week. Take care.